Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tomáš Pavlik from TUKE, from Technical University of Košice. I hope you've all had the chance to enjoy your lunch. We are now moving into the second part of today's event, focused on the topic technology transfer, how to do it properly. And this session, or the first session, was facilitated by Tor. We also delivered 2 presentations earlier, and now we have 2 more presentations coming up. So we expect to finish a bit earlier than originally planned. And the first presentation will be delivered by Tor Rodriguez from Atrineo, covering best practices in technology transfer. And the second presentation will be given by Maria Radvanska from the Enterprise Europe Network, working here at the Technical University of Košice, where we have also the Office of Enterprise Europe Network. And she will give us some knowledge about on the topic of innovation. Yeah, the topic with the title Innovation Starts Inside, from barriers to breakthroughs. So if you are all ready, I'll now hand over to Tor. The floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Tomas. Let me quickly switch here the presentations. So go here, share the window. Then I want to go into presentation. Can you see that I am on presenter mode? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Great, wonderful. So hi everyone again. I'm Tor. I'm not gonna introduce myself once again. But now I'm gonna present a talk regarding the best practices in innovation transfer. And then the idea behind the session is kind of a collection of 3 key points that we highly recommend and we usually give as advice to the partners. So the first part, I'm going to talk about the importance of IP protection, which kind of sounds obvious, but not always. There's a lot of kind of hidden links of knowledge that you get from trying to protect your IP protection, specifically when you go to the patent path. Then I'll talk a bit about the different approaches that you have from the perspective of a technology transfer officer regarding proactive and reactive measurements in protecting transfer objects. And finally, if we have time, I'll go specifically onto the best practices for market estimation for transfer cases. This was original topic that my colleague on workshop 4, Silvia, also from Ateneo, she mentioned a bit, but I think it's good to have a quick refresher about it. Okay, so let's begin with the first part, which is about the innovation pathways, innovation objects. So I would like to start with the introduction regarding what innovation is, specifically in the context that we use for scientific institutions. I'm sure there's many countless definitions of innovation itself, but I think we should use the one that it's useful for the case they're working on, which is often working directly with partners in other institutions in the scientific realm. And the one that really works super well, according to our experience, is that innovation in the context of scientific institutions is defined by applying scientific findings in society. So it goes beyond the interest writing new papers and publications and figure out new ways to do it. It's because here we shift the focus into the actual applicability of the innovation that you're developing. The idea behind it is like, not only you need to figure out something new, but you also need to find a way to apply this to society as a whole. Society is a multifaceted thing. You can go all the way to market, but there's also communication, there's also society as a whole overall. And that is the definition that we like to use. And then I would like to talk a bit about different innovation pathways from science. So the idea behind innovation pathways is that on the previous session, I mentioned a lot about product generation and startup progression, but that's just one of the potential innovation pathways for transferring your transfer object innovation from a scientific setting to the overall societal setting. And not necessarily all the paths, they lead you into a profit-oriented way. I like to start with science communication, which is the idea behind we have knowledges that are discovered in scientific institutions and want to translate that to other parts of society. There's the whole realm of science communication that can be either from doing public events, that you communicate your science researches to other stakeholders, all the way to making trainings and putting content online, or for example, what we're doing now, in which, look, we communicate the findings. And that's quite important because science itself, it benefits society as a whole. And the idea of science is also by default a collaborative event. And I think it's one of the great things that public institutions can do, is that we generate a lot of knowledge that maybe just for an individual or just an organization, the incentives, financially speaking, they don't exist for this thing to exist. So it needs some initial public research, and then you communicate those, and then later people can build upon that. You often see this case for many different developments, but the idea is that you can become a science communicator, even if it's just, I'm gonna explain to kids and teenagers in schools about how science communication works, all the way to sometimes you have open visitation nights or nights of the science events in which the university is open, and then you invite people, and then you just kind of talk about the things that you're developing. It's often difficult to measure a benefit to community as a whole, because yeah, it's hard to measure, oh great, people are now inspired by science to become scientists. But I think you see a lot of real world impact into this. I think a fascinating example, even though it's not directly from the scientific community, is Inspiration, which is the Star Trek series in the 60s and 70s. And then a lot of people that grew up watching that later on, they end up wanting to become scientists because they were inspired by the things that they saw. Often if you go to NASA and you ask people their inspirations, they say that it's some sort of scientific event or a TV series or show. So definitely scientific communication plays a massive part in it's a great pathway from transferring what has been created into society as a whole. On the second pathway would be contract research or collaborative research, which is this idea of you have either another institution, a consortium, or maybe a private institution, and they come towards you and they're interested in the things you're developing, and they want to establish a specific collaboration with you. So the idea would be you get approached by and you say, look, here's our capacities. We're able to develop this specific type of research. If you give us this specific criteria or funding, or we can start a collaboration together, and so on. That is a potential path that you can have. That doesn't include necessarily, I'm going to create a new product or a new service. You can just directly collaborate with someone. A third pathway would be IP licensing. So you have your university or institution develops intellectual property as it goes, and then you start accumulating that. Since we talked about before, there's different ways that you can protect the value that you have created. And then now you're in the phase that people are interested in the developments that you did. I mentioned before the MP3 file standard, and that different big technology companies were licensing this technology from the Fraunhofer Institute. That's an example of an IP licensing as a pathway from transferring innovation from science to society as a whole. You're able to transfer through licenses or agreements or contracts or selling of patents, different IPs that you developed under your umbrella. A middle path would be the startup creation. I already spoke about this before, so briefly go, you start up a company, spin off from a university, and then now you're generating value for society as a whole. You deliver goods and services and products, so that is the benefit of it. Infrastructure services, you often see this when you have very specialized infrastructure for conducting scientific experiments. It's often seen in biochemical oriented labs. So you have the whole infrastructures, you have the spectrometers and the electron microscopes, and you have all the different testing tubes. And then these are very costly. Some universities, they have partnerships in which they can provide these infrastructure services for either free of charge or for a reasonably affordable fee to different third-party partners, and then they're able to utilize the infrastructure. And more exaggerated example would be something like a particle collider, which is a massive structure that costs fortunes, and then most of the companies wouldn't be able to afford that. So that's an example of like you're able to apply for the scientific infrastructure to do your own research. Another good example would be, for example, space telescopes. So the recently launched last recently was 2 years ago, but the recently James Webb Space Telescope, they have their own partnership program in which you apply to, so you can use part of the operational time of James Webb to analyze a specific sector of the stars or the space. And this is a type of collaborative research. Sixth, you have co-creation and stakeholder engagement, and this is pretty much the idea that not only science is made only in academia and these specialized centers, but you also have co-creation with different stakeholders from society. A good example was this European Union initiative called eBird, which was this application that allows you to verify where the different species of birds are flying to, but you can also log what you see. So this enables users to be able to use their camera application, take pictures and make observations of birds flying, and then they're able to post on this platform, this application platform. And even though the original idea was, oh, this is an application that allows people that enjoy bird watching to know where they're gonna where they can find the birds they're looking for. It was also a great tool that allowed scientific researchers to understand more about migration of specific bird species. Another interesting example is this project Discovery that was actually part of a video game called Evoline. So Evoline was this multiplayer game, and then at some point they put together the reward system of the video game together with this platform called Discovery Project. And pretty much what it was is they provided a bunch of images of specific molecules, and then people had to categorize them to identify specific organelles within the specific cells. And then they gamify this process so that when you do that, your character gets rewarded with the game currency, but at the same time, pretty much what you're doing is you're using human resources to manually categorize thousands of different cells images. So you're able to better train later on language models and vision models to be able to automatically do this. So these are examples of co-creations and stakeholder engagement. And then finally, you have service provisioning, which is the idea that, well, your institution, you have, as we spoke before, there's a lot of different value created in the form of human capital, but also in the form of the knowledge-based assets. And then you want to provision these services to other potential interested parties. So this can be done through consultancy or some training or some sort of specialized cooperation. But the idea behind this is to demonstrate that there are more than one there's many different pathways that you can actually transfer your innovation objects from academia all the way to the society as a whole. It's not just, oh, you have to make a product or you have to sell a patent, and it's much more. There's way other different paths that don't involve necessarily commercializing something. And just for a quick refresher, like we mentioned before, we have different types of values, assets that are created within university. You have your knowledge-based assets, you have your physical and tangible assets, you also have your human capital, and then finally, there's the different ways that you can protect the value created through the intellectual property. And yeah, so just give I would just like to give like an example of like a potential commercialization pathway that occurs when you're working on an activity related to, let's say you want to develop a specific product or a specific license. And then normally you have the ideation phase, which is the early on phase, thinking about my idea. Now that I know where good ideas come from, I can have a better grasp on how that works and everything together. And now I'm going to the invention disclosure. So I'm done generating my invention. I'm doing the whole disclosure process. I realized that the thing that I'm trying to work on can be converted to a patent. So I do the project application. Project application means it's the first phase in which someone that wants to patent something, it does the initial application. So this is important because there's often a 1-year gap between once you first apply to a patent and all the way until the patent is granted. The patent has to go through this whole assessment evaluation process of, oh, is this thing actually patentable? Has it been done before? Other patent holders are able to evaluate your application and see, hey, this is infringing my patent, it's not infringing my patent. There's this whole period of more or less 1 year between once you apply and all the way to being granted or not. And then in the meanwhile, you can do the whole market insights. So as previously mentioned before, there's the whole market fit assessment to see how good your application is in a specific market. You can do also your market assessment by collecting different data to understand how big your market is, the other potential of different segmentation possibilities for your market, how big it is, what it is. But meanwhile, you can also figure out how to actually orchestrate your operations, how to make money out of this. So often the activities you're working on require further financing. This can come from either public or from private sources. It often depends on what you have available to you to be able to utilize it. And then you have multiple iteration phases. We usually bundle all these things to further development, which is the part of you have to trim out the edges, improve your MVP to a more commercially attractive product. There's many different edges you have to trim. And then at some point, ideally, you also, if you are in the business commercialization path, ideally you want to have a very solid business model. So you want to understand, okay, what do I have? How can I commercialize it? What are my commercialization channels? Who are my main commercialization partners? Who are my main customers? Who are my main suppliers? You collect all the required information in order to have your properly set up business model plan. And then once that, you can go on and start your market entry. That is a very typical commercialization pathway from the startup path, for example. An actual tangible example would be the development of CRISPR-Cas. So CRISPR-Cas is a gene editing tool. Pretty much it's a very ingenious way of allowing you to add specific instructions within inside the cell. So you're able to generate very specific proteins that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. And then, as you can see, they have a very comparable commercialization step. First, they had the ideation, so the first reported papers and publications made on CRISPR-Cas. Then they went to the invention disclosure. Pretty much they apply for the invention saying, hey, we developed this technology. We want to have the patent rights for this. Later on, they started collecting marketing insights. So they started sharing their first reagents and tools with different institutions. And pretty much they're like, hey guys, here's the tools that we have. We'd like you to test on them, like you to experiment to see what we can do, what you cannot do. Start getting feedback from the customer bases. And then they went through different rounds of, okay, now let's get additional funding sources. Since this was developed at Berkeley, they have very wide available sources for public, but also specifically private financing. So I don't think that was the issue with the CRISPR-Cas technology, but still, in the meanwhile, you need to go to the further development. So have to trim a lot of things, do revisions to the prototypes that you have, improve your product to get feedback from customers, organize your whole organization infrastructure around it. Okay, now we're in the business of developing this commercially. How are we going to do this? In the meanwhile, they got a Nobel Prize, which is not bad. And then finally, you navigate all the way to the market entry. Okay, now we have everything, all the necessary steps for the commercialization have been properly established, and now we can finally move on into actually getting to market. So that is just one of the different examples that you can have regarding how you can come from the different innovation pathways all the way to succeeding to doing the complete transfer of your transfer object. So that would be it for innovation pathways, transfer objects. And now I'd like to talk a bit about the importance of IP protection, which is often, you often realize how important it is once issues are starting to arise. So here we have a couple of examples of issues that arise. These are actually from previous clients that we have. I just made the information very abstract, but these are based off real world events. So the first one will be a study of some issues with software commercialization. So one company, they developed a specific product by doing a combination of different software tools. And then at some point, one of the engineers forgot to keep track of all the licenses from different software they're using. And then at some point, they publish a product that is doing software infringement using a library, a software library that was supposed to be specific licensing in a specific format, and they completely ignored that, or they neglected the licensing, and then at some point now they're getting sued because they're doing copyright infringement. Second case, it would be often the case with spin-offs. So often when you have specifically professors in PhD settings, you have the PIs, the principal investigators, and you have the students, and then they kind of co-develop things together, specifically on the research edge, but it's often not very clear who owns the rights of the things that have been done. So often it's the case of, oh, a professor is going to say that this is my research group, so this belongs to me. Sometimes the student is going to say, oh, this was just a professor on the paper. He never helped me. I figured out everything on myself. And then often there's no specific contracting or specific papers making very clear who owns what, who does the copyright belongs to. And then you can have later down the road many very costly and time-consuming bureaucratic issues regarding this, specifically when he came up with something very interesting. That is, by coincidence, not exactly, but something very similar happened originally with the Chris-Cas patent. It was a bit dubious of who actually built what and who should have the actual rights for it. And that was something that hindered for years the actual further commercialization of the technology itself, because you have two people that work together and both were claiming that they actually sole rights owner of the technology, and that had to be decided in court. It was just, it's better to avoid these things before they actually get to this level of issues. And the third case would be just a collaboration issue. So sometimes you just collaborate with people that are not even on your institution itself. Sometimes you collaborate with third parties, specifically when you have these large consortiums or large programs or inter-university programs. And then sometimes it's not very clear who owns what. Many people participate in doing the same thing, but some participate more, others participate less. And then when it's the time to share the proceeds of what was done, you might end up having these sort of conflicts. So that is why we believe it is very important not only to properly manage your intellectual property, but also specifically with in the contracting phase. It's very important to make sure that everybody's very aware of who the proceeds belong to, who does what goes to where, all these different elements, just to avoid complications in the future. And now a bit more into patents themselves. So according to the World Intellectual Property Organization, the WIPO, their definition of a patent is exclusive right granted limited period of time by a state or an invention, which is a product or a process that provides, in general, a new way of doing something or offers a new technical solution to a problem. To get the patent, technical information about the invention must be disclosed to the public in a patent application. So the whole core idea behind the patent is we create the mechanism, so we incentivize different organizations or individuals to actually put a lot of effort into developing new groundbreaking technologies, and then we grant them exclusivity rights to only be the one that is able to exploit and benefit from this once they completely share how they actually did it. So the idea is, look, we're gonna make sure that you're the only one that can benefit from this, but afterwards, once your patent's over, people will be able to utilize what you built, and now you can expand knowledge because now you have more knowledge over the world that can build upon. Now people can take your previously patent item and they can build new iterations over it, so you can keep advancing the state of the art of information. That is the whole social contract behind the idea behind a patent. If you want to go a bit more deep into it, there's three main requirements that a patent needs to have to be for an object, for transfer object to have to be able to be eligible for being patented. The first requirement is the requirement of novelty. So that's stated in Article 54.2. The definition is down below, but pretty much the idea of novelty is you need to build something that is expanding on the state of art. You need to build something that is non-obvious and expands, like it's novel. The second would be about the inventive step. Actually, this is actually very focused on the idea of like what you need to do needs to be a non-obvious application. And then finally, the third very important pillar is the pillar of the industrial applicability. You can't just have something that is new and it's inventive. There's also a need to prove that, look, the thing that I'm doing is very applicable to this specific industry. These are the three pillars of elements that you can actually patent or you cannot patent. If you don't have these, technically, you shouldn't be able to patent something. To go a bit more into novelty, the definition of novelty is you discover something that does not belong to the state of the art of a specific area. So the idea behind a state of the art is if you get all the knowledge that exists on this specific topic by all the different knowledgeable people, what you're doing is something that neither of these people know. You're expanding on the state of the art. That is the idea behind it, and that's something that we often have to say very often that this is valid for the current time that you're applying for a patent. So let's say that the moment you apply for a patent, the patent reviewer, he's going to do like a general search to see if what you're describing hasn't been described anywhere else. And if that was the case, technically you're not expanding on the state of the art because your knowledge already exists. And surprisingly enough, even you can infringe all your own state of art. So that's what we say. If you produce something and then you put in a conference communication paper or in a post, or you publish an abstract, or you post about your information online on your blog, or this information is regarding your PhD thesis or something that you made a seminar on our oral presentation and you disclosure the technology that you're working on. You distribute your material in a fair or with a potential business partner. Now the department knows and he somehow disclosure this. Or if you talk too much to ChatGPT and somehow ChatGPT gets leaked, if your information becomes public, it's no longer lawful, and then you cannot patent you think that you have. And there's a general rule of thumb, like the golden rule is, if you think about patenting something, you should always patent or at least start the application process before you publish anything else. Otherwise, you might risk losing the novelty, and then this thing can no longer be applicable. And there is a very fascinating story regarding it about a specific fascinating patent that was developed by the Danish engineer Carl Koya. So in 64, there was this massive accident in the Gulf of Kuwait. You have this massive one of those like naval ships, transfer ships, and it was carrying a massive shipment of livestock, like living sheep. And then some accident, malfunction, failure happened in the boat, and the boat completely capsized. The boat started to sink, and it sank all the way down to the bottom of the Gulf of Kuwait, and all the livestock was dead. And then people got stuck with a very serious issue that we have all this live animal material, this biomaterial there. And in the case, if the material started to decompose or started to leak, you could have a massive, terrible spillage all over the Gulf of Kuwait, and that would just pretty much be a complete catastrophe to the wildlife, and also it would make the beach uninhabitable and very smelly bad. And then people had to figure out a very quick and smart and effective way to retrieve this boat from the bottom of the ocean to be able to retrieve all the contents there. And then they got in touch with different engineering firms, naval firms all over the world. And at some point, this Mr. Koya was aware about this, and then he developed this new technology in which his idea was you have a massive tube that will go from a boat on the surface all the way down to the boat on the bottom of the sea. And then you would transfer a lot of, inside of this massive tube, you transfer a lot of hollow balls with a lot of air inside. And then if you just keep doing this over and over and over and over again, eventually you start changing the density of the whole boat. And then at some point, I don't know the physics about it, but at some point the boat starts floating. And that's exactly what happened. At some point, the boat was filled up with these balls, these spheres with lighter than air gas. And then at some point, he was able to lift the full boat from the bottom of the ocean. And then everybody was like, wow, that was incredible. We got a boat from the bottom of the ocean in X amount of time. It was super fast. This was done in maybe 3 days. So from a complete emergency all the way to the solution in only 3 days. It's incredible. And then he was like, great, I'm going to patent my technology, and I'm going to be rich out of this or something. And then somehow the patent officer that was reviewing his case, he was aware that it was not the first time he'd seen this technology. And by coincidence, he happened to read the same Donald Duck comic book that actually describes this technology being used, which is Donald Duck get the boys and they just push a bunch of golf balls on this ship, and the ship comes back into the water. And then technically this was, his invention was no longer novel, so he lost the ability to be able to patent this. I don't think he took inspiration from a comic. Maybe he did, but that is like a fascinating story of if the thing you're trying to patent already exists, even if the most unexpected ways, you're avoiding the state of art novelty. You no longer can protect your IP. So that's why IP protection is super important, specifically if you want to later on commercialize something. Moving on, I want to talk a bit about the inventive step or the non-obviousness of something. So the Article 56 states that you need to have an inventive step, which the idea behind is you need to do something that is not obvious for a subject expert of the area you're working on. So a subject expert will be someone that has a generally good amount of knowledge on the specific area that you're working on, but it doesn't need to be like the greatest genius, a Nobel Prize winner, or nothing like that. And then you need to come up with something, actually original, something that is not obvious. The example used for something obvious is a glass mug. A mug already exists, and glass cups already exist. Coming up with a glass mug is not it doesn't constitute a massive inventive step because it's a very obvious thing to do. This is also a requirement that if you don't meet, you're not able to patent something. And then finally, we have the whole industrial applicability, which I mentioned before. At the end of the day, you need to find something that you can actually apply the thing you're trying to work on that. Otherwise, it's just not possible for you to patent that. So if you can come up with a nice mathematical formula, you can say, look, this is novel, true. This has an inventive step, true. But if you cannot find an inventive step, you're not able to patent that. That's why, for example, you cannot patent a mathematical operation, or you cannot patent a new equation, a new formula. Technically, you can have copyright over it, but that's a different story, but not a patent itself. But finally, to conclude, one thing that is very important that you don't necessarily need to have a patent to protect the IP that you're developing. Often companies employ just a combination of these different value protection measurements to protect their innovation. So in the case of an old phone, we have the different trademarks regarding the specific brand and logo of the company itself. We have patents related to the industrial design of the specific mobile case, but you also have for the different components, each one of the components that have very specific patents. So you have patents for components related to the camera, the display, the antenna. Mobile and generally speaking, technological devices, it's often the case because these are usually a combination of products with hundreds of, if not thousands of different licenses and patents and so on and so on and so on. So if you get a phone and you start breaking down almost all the components that have very specific license agreements, you need to have a license for you having your Wi-Fi receiver. You need to have a license if your device accepts HDMI. HDMI is a licensing format. It's not an open source thing. So if you want to offer HDMI on your computer, you need to pay licensing fees for that. If you want to offer the headphone jack, you need to pay licensing fees for that. If you want to use Bluetooth, Bluetooth is also, it's not an open source standard. You need to pay fees for that. If you want to use the Bluetooth logo, you also have to pay fees for that. Usually companies, when they want to produce something, it's often a combination of different trademarks, different patents, and also different copyrights. So because you can see in a specific phone, the software is copyrighted, the graphics, the UI, all these different elements, they are copyrighted and they often protected by different types of licenses. So that's, yeah. Also excluding the trade secrets and the know-how. So what are the best standard operational procedures so I can produce and manufacture a phone in volume and scale, the different trade secrets of how to do this the best way, the other way. But generally speaking, going back to the idea of protecting your IP and why it's important, I also want to make a case of why even if you just want to give up everything that you have, you might still want to go through the licensing and the IP protection process. And the core arguments, I mean, there's many, we have 10 core arguments, but they can benefit you directly or indirectly. Argument one is that it really increases the visibility within the field of what you're doing. So this is specific for patents because for a long time, patents, they used to be the default KPI for how innovative your university is. So you have universities had incentives to generate a lot of patents because they could go and say, look, we're very innovative. We have a lot of patents. And likewise, professors, they could do the same. They could say, hey, I have 20 patents. I'm a very smart guy. You also have the strengthening profile in your focus area. So you can say, hey, this is my institute. My institute has generated X amount of patents. So you can see we have a good prestige area. We know what we're talking about. We can advertise the potential for commercial application. The idea behind this is that you can go to partners and say, look, we're very inventive. Here's our patent portfolio. Maybe some of these things are interested in you guys having. Maybe we'll want to take a look at our portfolio so you can maybe see if there's some potential cooperation opportunity there. Also, like I mentioned before, it enhances your resume for a later career. So it makes you look nice and smart, saying that you are the author or co-author of, you're the, not the author, the inventor of specific patents. You can also use this to fulfill research policy expectations. So often universities are like, okay, our KPIs for you to, in the next 4 years, develop a new patent. And likely you want to do that. So you can check the box, achieve your KPI. Patents can also serve as further arguments for acquire even further subsidies. So specifically when you're applying for a project or to get more public funded money, you can argue, say, I am a prolific producer. I have all these patents under my umbrella before, and then because of this, I would like you to give me more money. This is like it's a certificate that I can actually be inventing and generate new things. You have potential monetary returns. To be very clear, it's very unlikely a patent, specifically if you be within your institution, is going to make you rich. But maybe you get a very nice institute for yourself. The creator of the MP3, at the end, Fraunhofer decided to build a new institute from the ground up and pretty much gave it to him. He was the general manager, the general director for the whole institute. So, and he also made some good amount of bucks for that. So generally speaking, it ends up being good if you come up with something very, very impactful. There's also benefits in industrial cooperation. It can also serve for basis for research-related spin-offs. But the most important things that, well, at least generally different scientists would agree that the most important thing is that having the rights, having the license of your own IP gives you freedom to determine what other people might or might not do with that. So even with the case when you develop something that is open source, there's specifically for code, there's different types of open source coding licenses. And let's say, for example, you want technology to be used only for the good. You don't want this to be used in any sort of military applications or nothing like that. You can specifically add a clause saying that this technology cannot be used for these specific applications. You can specifically add a clause saying that you reserve the right to revoke authorization of using this IP for any specific circumstance at any time. So you can prohibit people that might want to use the technology for doing something that you ethically or morally disagree with to do so. So there are many different benefits for why it's relevant to protect your IP outside just, oh, I can have a patent, I can make money out of it. Good. With that being said, I want to talk a bit now about the different proactiveness and reactiveness behaviors regarding identification of transfer cases. And this is more oriented towards technology transfer professionals, but mostly towards those that are in charge of supporting different scientific personnel into transferring their findings for society. So we have generally like a large and abstract definition of a transfer case, but a transfer case is an internal project with the goal of validating existing potential within the institution to a set of activities and further developing it towards application, consultation, and or communication beyond the realm of academia. But the whole idea behind a transfer case is we want to get our transfer object and we want to push that into a specific innovation pathway so later can be used. And mostly there's two main approaches on how you can deal with this from the perspective of the technology transfer office. First one is the proactive. So you as the ATT officer, you're actively probing and looking to identify potential opportunities within the organization you're part of. And then you also have the reactive approach, which is you just exist. And then at some point, some scientist and some personnel, some employee might come to you and say, hey, I think we have a good idea of this, or hey, I think I want to do this, and I might need your help. These are the two main approaches, and we are massive advocates of the proactive approach for many different reasons. So the most important one is that the proactive approach, you're in charge of things, and it actually allows you to really try to tackle as it's possible the potential of your institution in comparison to the reactive approach. The problem with just being reactive would just be passive, is that there might be an issue in which you just waiting for something to happen, waiting for a researcher to come to you, waiting for something to take place. And as we mentioned before, it's often the case that even the people that work in these institutions, they're not very well aware that they build something of value, they build something that can be later transferred, they build something that can be used in a different area of science. Often scientists, they are very good at doing research, but not much outside that, specifically when it comes to the whole transfer of knowledge that was built. And then you might leave a lot of unexplored potential or gaps. And we just think that's it's a misallocation of resources when you just have the people in your university and they're building great things, but they don't know how to push that to the proper transfer path, and then it just leads to untapped potential, which I don't think it's desirable for anyone. So that's why the proactive approach is much more efficient. So it allows you to, tap into the activities of institution, understand what different people are doing, and then you're able to consider different possibilities that often the scientists themselves, they don't consider. Often they're so focused on their own research that they don't stop to think of potential alternatives, or they're just not experienced or knowledgeable about the potential opportunities. And then you, as the technology transfer officer, you're able to tap into this kind of hidden sleeping potential. Going a little bit more into the specifications regarding transfer cases. Generally, we say there are three key dimensions that are very important to generate good transfer cases: the people, the results, and the market afterwards. And this is done in a very specific order, and the order really matters. The most important thing by far would be the people within. So the idea behind the people is that literally the scientists, the researchers that develop something, they need to be on board within the same activities you want to do, whether that's commercialization or licensing or transfer or agreements. Otherwise, it's very unlikely that anything you're trying to do will go forward. We had as an anecdotal example, but a while ago, even here in the company, I was working on this new technology project from a specific patent that a client built, and then we were able to find we found a potential commercialization partner. This other big company, they were very eager to buy the patent that we presented to them. We gave them a full presentation. We explained the key benefits of the patent, innovation, where they could apply to, and then they made us and our client a very good offer about buying the patent itself. And one of the only requirements that they have, which is also the requirement that most of people in the commercialization scene are going to do, is they expect you to provide further support directly from the scientists that develop the technology, because from all the world, they're the ones that know the best how the technology actually works. And then pretty much the researcher in question, he just refused to do it. He didn't want to have anything to do. He was more interested in doing his own other research and publication instead of providing support for the company. So we have to avoid the whole operations. And that was a shame, because the university lost the chance to acquire a couple extra €100, and it feels like it's another patent that goes into the patent drawer until it's expired. So a very important thing is to tackle on the people part of your transfer cases. If the people they're not on board, it's very unlikely that you're going to get anywhere. And then you also have results and you have markets. I'll go over them briefly, but a little bit more about the people, results, and the markets. For each one of these, we have like three main questions we want to answer. What information is important? So what do I need to know to fulfill my requests? How can I obtain information regarding this access? And finally, how can I organize and handle all the information that I have acquired? Regarding the people, ideally, if they're in the same institution not super massive, you can just go and talk to them. So you can have a personal conversation, you can reach out to the office, you can ask about what they're doing, you can ask about the capacity of resources, their openness, their willingness to interact with you. If in case you're part of a massive organization and they have thousands of employees, you can just do a lot of desk research. So often on your internal databases or just over the web, researchers, they often have somewhere online where they put all the publications, whether it's on Google Patents or on public domain repositories or ResearchGate. You can do all the desk research and you're able to find all the information that's interesting for you to know. Following into the results. So this was, I'm not going to go too much into the results part because it's mentioned also on the previous workshop session about identifying your use cases, identifying the potential applications for this, identifying the special and unique characteristics of the technology you're applying. But pretty much the core idea behind this is that you want to quantify the benefits that your technology can bring to the users. You want to identify if have any competitive advantage or not regarding potential competitors. You want to understand what is the whole IP situation of the rights and the ownership of the object you're trying to transfer. Understand what are the core elements that are required for the results to keep on going. Understand what is the maturity level of the research results. Very important, especially on the commercialization part of things. So I think was Henrietta that previously mentioned about the TRL, the technology readiness level, and then pretty much the idea is you have different categories to be able to measure how solid and ready for transfer your technology is. You're likely able to assess any technology using this method. It's a NASA developed method to understand how good the research was. So it's quite robust and it's pretty much an industry default now on research maturity. And then finally, you get into the markets part, which also mentioned before, mentioned specifically this was what my colleagues, Silvia and Training 4 did about understanding markets, getting market data, getting information from different market segmentation, all these different practices. But pretty much the idea is, you want to understand how big your market is. You want to understand the potential segmentations. You want to understand the attractiveness of different sectors, and so on and so on. A definition of a market, I don't think we have to go through. Pretty much you have a market's like a location in which buyers and sellers can transaction different products and services. Just a couple keynotes on also additional, maybe tangential information that is important for you to take aware when you're conducting the whole market assessment part. So it's good to understand trends and drivers. So what are the current trends that exist within the market I'm working on? What is the main drivers for the market? Is the market growing? If yes, why is the market growing? If it's shrinking, why? It's good to understand not only what's going on, but also why these things are going on, so you can have better predictability if the things are going to change or not. Back into volume and growth. So you want to understand how actually big the size of the market is, what are the most important segments, and if you see changes, how you can explain these changes. Once again, understanding not only what's going on, but also why these elements are going on. On the customer understanding is a bit more into the whole segmentation thing. So who are my customers, how they differentiate among different types of customers, which are the different incentives and the requirements that each customer categorization has, and how your solution can actually be used to support them. And finally, on the competitive overview, this also overlaps a bit with the whole risk analysis, risk assessment of who are the potential competitors to my solution? Are there other companies also working the same area that I'm also working? And if not, they're doing something else. What are the alternatives to the solution that I'm offering that also exist? And how does the thing I'm working on compares with them? And then once you get all these, you can go into the how do I obtain information. Once again, if you want to know everything about primary and secondary data collection, market collection, workshop training 4. Silvia. And shortcutting a bit, finally we get into the how do I handle the identified generated ideas. And there's no right or wrong approach, but ideally you want to find a good structure of how you can organize all the knowledge that you did in a way that later is concise and objective, not only for you, but also for the people that you want to share your results with afterwards. Ideally, you want to have a set of core criteria followed by supplementary criteria. Core criteria, they should kind of focus on the most overall overarching important elements that you're required to have a successful transfer case. In the case of people, the willingness to participate is often an issue that we have, that it's very hard to convince people to work in something if they already don't want to work on something, if they already feel comfortable doing another area. Regarding the research results, you need to ideally want to have a good comprehensible overview of the different benefits, different use cases and applications that you research you have, including the comparative advantage assessment. And then in the market, you also want to have a good full complete set of your market assessment, your trend identification, your competitors overviews, your forecasting for market change, access and distribution to potential markets. These are all very important elements. And then for each one of these main categories, you can have also supplementary criteria, which are kind of like secondary criteria, but they also allow you, if you have the time to spend, you can give more, acquire for further insights regarding the specific part. So for example, the compatibility of this specific activity with future research and development. You can have an assessment of how much further investment is required to make this thing go from an idea to a minimum viable product to mass production. It's good to have an understanding of, if I have to hire people, how much it's going to cost me a year, if I have to hire licenses, if I have to get equipment, if I have to get offices, all these different things. You also want to have a good idea of the funding opportunity. So, okay, now that I know more or less how much money I'm going to spend, how much money do I actually need to be able to fund the activities that I want to do, and if I would be able to acquire this funding, and also the different sources that I can have. So you have all the way from public-private partnerships, you have governmental grants, you have private investors, you have VC, you have going to the bank and getting a loan, different opportunities for you to be able to fund your ventures. And without going to each one of the cases, so on and so on and so on, there are many different supplementary criteria that one must be mindful of when they are considering these transfer cases. And then finally, you have a way to organize everything. If you want to be very objective and try to give this aura of empirically based analysis, you can just try to do a massive Excel multiplication. It's important to warn a bit about just going full into quantitative methods, because often they try to provide this image of, oh, we're very science oriented, but you end up just hiding a lot of details and a lot of uncertainties behind numbers to make things sound like more organized. But at the same time, I must warn about going full qualitative. So just having non-objective criteria of, I like technology, the market looks good, people are receptive of my technology, because you might end up at best fooling yourself, being too taken by your own passions and not seeing things clearly. But it's also because it's harder for you to compare different transfer cases at the end. So the core main benefit of having a quantitative approach is that you can objectively, quote unquote, have different criteria, and then you can attach a specific value or number towards each of these criteria, and then later on, very easy to compare them. It's very easy to provide a sum, and then it more or less can allow you to understand, okay, what are the best cases that I have? This is often what we do when we have some specific projects. University come to us and they give their whole patent portfolio, and they have a portfolio with 100 patents, and they ask us, what are the best patents that we can work on? We only have resources for commercializing or exploring 10 or 20 patents, and we have 100. We need to figure out which ones do we try to push further on, and which ones do we abandon them. And then often the best way to not only for organize yourself, but also to convince your client to be able to clearly visualize what is going on. You have this evaluation Excel matrix kind of style of results. So not only that, but that's one of the things that we're recommending in a toolkit. Nonetheless, if things are just getting out of control and getting too tricky, you can also just simplify things a little bit by just answering a couple quick questions. So this kind of or key takeaways is, ideally you should be able to answer very well these tricky questions, and just the answer of these will give you more or less a good answer of what you should expect of a specific transfer case. So the first question, is there a high motivation at the institution for further investments or engagement with the case? Pretty much what you're trying to measure here is, are there people involved here? What is a specific scientist or a group or a whole institution? Are they really invested into further providing assistance to support the case? If the answer is no, I'm afraid it's very unlikely you're able to go through transfer cases, unless the transfer cases are absolutely complete, unless the team was like, oh, we made the whole product and we made the whole marketing strategy and we made everything. You just have to press the button and start selling online. Unless that's the case, we find that it's very unlikely that we're able to successfully further go with this transfer case. The second point is regarding does the investment or effort required to develop the case justify the expected monetary or non-monetary returns? And it sounds a bit obvious, but often it's the case that you have good promising technologies, and then once you actually start analyzing what else needs to be done to get this technology into a state that it can later be licensed or commercialized or transferred in any useful meaning way, we see that the overall benefits that it brings to the market are the cost of converting this is much higher than the actual benefits. Sometimes we have technologies that we talk to the stakeholders and they're like, oh, even if I put this technology into all my products and I sell 100 times more than I sell currently, I'm still not going to be able to make this profitable. And this is like the leading company on the specific realm for that one application. So unfortunately, this happens the case that the idea is very good, but you just don't have economic incentives there to follow along. And third question, is the respective case robust? And then you check the different criteria of robustness. How does the product solution fit? What is the maturity level of the technology? What is the durability of the lead case? What are the alternative solutions? And so on and so on. And this can also give you more or less of a good thermometer of expectations of, oh, things are looking good or things are not looking bad. These are generally the 3 key questions that we recommend for any specific transfer case, that it should at least have a good way of understanding at the end of the day, okay, how the thing that I'm working on fares with these 3 criteria. And just by having a good grasp of these, you already have a very more or less good overview of how things are going, which direction they're going, if they're going to be positive, they're going to be less optimal than they could be. And with that being said, that is the final point regarding the transfer cases. Thanks very much for everyone for the attention. I'm going to stop sharing now. Would anyone have any questions regarding the presentation? I guess not. Okay.
It looks like you have answered and covered everything, Tor. So there are no questions. Very comprehensive, so. Very comprehensive presentation. Thank you for an excellent performance. By the way, with 3 presentations in a row today. It has certainly contributed to enriching our knowledge. And on top of which you provided clear, illustrative, and engaging examples. So thank you for it. It was well done. So
thanks a lot, Tomas. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So okay, if there are really no questions, we can maybe pass to the last speaker, and it is Maria Radwanska. She prepared a topic on internal barriers to innovation in SMEs, and we can look forward to more case studies. And so Maria is, as was mentioned, from Enterprise Europe Network, from here based at the Technical University of Košice. So I can see everything is ready. The presentation is showing in a presenting mode. So Maria, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tomasz. So let's finish today's meeting with a lighter presentation than the previous one, which was full of information. Thank you, Thor, for doing it in such a great way. So in my presentation, I would like to focus on the substance of technology transfer. You'll see where I see it, but first of all, my name is Maria Radwanska and I work at Technical University in Košice, in University Science Park, where I'm responsible for Enterprise Europe Network operation, but also for other things concerning projects. So I'm project officer in other, or manager or financial officer, whichever in other things as well. As today's session is focused on technology transfer, I would say technology transfer as such is basically the top of internal processes. So it's the kind of cherry on the top of the cake. But behind the technology transfer, there are many issues which we've already heard today. And when I looked on the program, I said to myself, I'll bring another thing to the point of view. As far as we know, the technology transfer is just a result of the processes inside, in the result of innovation system that is set in the organization, be it the university or a company or any other institution, as we can innovate whatever, whether it's the products or services. So the innovation system contains the innovation strategy, which needs to be very well set. The organization needs to have good innovation leadership, great innovation culture, and the innovation processes within itself. This is the innovation part in the organization, but all that is based on how the organization as such is set. So whether we do have for the organization good purpose, or in exponential organizations, we usually call it also massive transformative purpose, and whether we really have the joint goal where all the employees want to go towards. And in between purpose and the goal, there needs to be really set good strategy to reach the goal. And all the people need to be acknowledged with what's the goal, what's the purpose, so that they can really direct themselves and all the efforts and all the innovation efforts as well towards reaching the goal. And of course, what is crucial, the organization has to have its values, needs to have some rules for how to behave or how not to behave, its own principles, when to say yes and where to say no. So these are the things which are always, not always, very often forgotten in smaller companies, but also in institutions like universities, as it's a huge, or usually huge organization with many departments, faculties, workspaces, and so on. So sometimes the really focus on reaching the goals and actually knowing the goals as such at the level of departments, of faculties, are somehow somewhere in the midst. If you ask the people what is the goal of your department, what you want to reach in certain year or in certain period, well, the people react, well, they are probably mentioned in some documents, but I'm not really aware of that. I'm not really sure. So then it's really questionable how we want to reach and how the transfer of technologies if the people inside the organization don't really know what we want to reach. So this is something which I really call is the essence of transfer of technology, to know where the organization is heading and what purpose it has as such. Years ago, in US, there was really direct goal to get to the moon, and all the efforts were done in US economy and worldwide to reach that goal, to get to the moon, and it was reached because all the money concerning the space sector and development of all kinds of things around that were focused on that. So it took only about like 8-9 years to really reach the goal, but someone had to set it and others had to follow, or someone had to be enthusiastic enough to promote the purpose and the goal so that others could believe in it. So because it's not saying to go to the moon is a really easy thing, but to manage to it through trainings, through rockets, through materials, through textile used and so on is a really huge thing to do. So also in our organization, universities, faculties, or companies, someone needs to set really good purpose and goal so that the innovation could flourish within the organization. So my question would be for you, just reply to yourself within yourself, whether you really know where is your organization heading and what is the goal of your organization for next years. and whether you really know your, for example, KPIs for this quarter or for this year. So you may think it over, probably you know, but probably there are some organizations which might not have it very clear for every single employee. As Horst Schulz, who was one of the co-founders of Chain Ritz Hotel, says, if we as leaders don't give employees of all ages a dream worth joining, we get the labor strife we deserve. And labor strife is something we really don't want, because the labor strife means the people are not sure, people don't trust, people don't believe, people don't know what really to do, people don't know when to say, no, we are not going to do that, because that's not leading us towards a goal and it's not within our purpose. So it's really very crucial that the leaders know that and can set it and head people and have the desire to really get to accomplishment of the goals. There are many or several ways how to define the growth of the companies, how to categorize the companies into startup, grow up, scale up. I like this one when it's categorized into 4 groups based on people, based on number of employees. Because turnover is one thing, profit is also something very important, but what matters in the organization is really the people and their interactions. So each company, depending on how many people the company or organization has, is really having its own troubles, people troubles, I would say. It's based on the fact that there are many ongoing interactions among people. In a small company, when there is a startup company, there are few people, they can meet every day, they can discuss the things, everything is more or less clear. But the more people come into the organization, the information flow is more and more difficult to be organized. And the information through the organization flow in very different ways. Depending on the culture, probably it's also the point of view of the country, the DNA of people in the country, but many times it's just a human aspect. Human aspect from the point of view that we do trust some people and we don't trust other people. We've got some biases towards certain processes, towards certain people. And it's all human, it's normal, and we have to count with that not everybody is the same. That the thinking of people is different, that we come from different environmental, from our families, from our education, from our life experience. So we can't expect everybody think the same way. That's why we need to really, if we want to innovate, if we want to reach the transfer of technology, we need to have set really good flows of meetings so that the information could reach the people around the organization, and so that the so-called backup information or backup flows or the discussions in the corridors or in kitchen would be very clear, so that everybody could understand what's going on in the organization, what we want to reach, how we want to reach it, what we are able to reach, and so on. The important thing which I many times meet, I work with the companies, or I've been working with the companies the last over 25 years. And what I have realized definitely is that employees very often have the solutions before the management realizes the problem does exist in reality. Why is it so? Of course, it's very easy because the employees are on the spot. And it doesn't really matter what kind of organization it is, whether it's the company, whether it's university, whether it's any other institution. It's usually those who work on the spot. They know their problem exists, and they most often even know what the solution could be and how fast it can be set. The question is, of course, how come they don't say that? How come they don't come to upper level to say, well, there is such a problem and here comes the solution? It's all what I mentioned before. We've got superstitions, we've got biases, we don't trust each other many times. So depending on the culture, on the team we're in, we are either clear, open, and everything goes on very smoothly, or there are big barriers towards that. So it's very important that the management is able to reach and engage its employees into that, so that the innovation could really flourish and result in technology transfers as well. If the transfer of technology doesn't work, if innovations don't appear on the market, then definitely there must be internal barriers, there must be internal problems, and we need to get to know the company, the organization itself very deep, the internal context the organization works and its needs. How to do it? Of course, there are many possible things. There can be assessments, there can be meetings with management, with employees, various questionnaires, cards decks, internal workshops, or other tools. What I would like to share with you is the experience we've got. For years, we are doing the questionnaires within the companies. It's really small and medium-sized companies, Slovak companies in our region, where usually the owners, but sometimes even the employees reach us when they see our promotion of the service. And they come and say, okay, we would like to know what's going on in our organization, because in our company, because we know something is not working, but we don't know why. We are not reaching the results we would like to. We thought we will be much further on in our development, but something's wrong. And then what we do are the questionnaires. In the past, it was on-site questionnaires to every single employee. Nowadays, it's most often the online questionnaire, which is sent to every single employee. So we don't get the feedback from one or two people. I've been working in the network since the beginning, and also in the predecessors of Enterprise Europe Network, and we've been going through all kinds of assessment tools. The point was, though, that usually in those well-known assessment tools, which are very popular and well promoted, is that the feedback for the tools is provided by 1, 2, up to 5 people maximum from the top management, or where the management decides who can or who cannot reply. And that does not really provide clear overview of the situation in the company. Believe it or not, it is my experience that those tools are good in certain stage of the development. Once the internal processes are well set, once the culture is quite good, but many times they don't really provide the real feedback and the real overview on the situation. That's why we do those questionnaires, and we direct it towards all employees that are in the organization. And now I would like to share with you some examples of real cases from the companies that we reach, so that you could think over how it is in your organization or in your client organizations, and how to, in the future, probably change your attitude or build on your present experience for future better results. These are 3 different companies. where I will show you slide by slide the results which were reached, where the employees reply to the questions. For example, here's the question: I do trust the products we produce because they are of high quality and in demand. And you see here all kinds of replies. So usually there are some companies where I've got the feedback from like 90% of employees. There are companies where I get feedback from 50% of employees. The questionnaire is anonymous, so we ask them to reply, but we can't force them. There is no possibility to force and reach 100%. So it depends again on the culture of the company, how many people reply, how much they trust the process and potential positive things they can reach. So if we see that people do trust the product they produce, it's fine. It's very good. So they are working on something they believe is good, worth, and of good quality. But you see there also the graph which shows that people are not really fully satisfied with what they are producing. So in that case, we really need to look for where's the problem, whether it's the material used, whether it's the product itself, its functions, its design, whatever. So it's really important, and it's great space for innovation, for improvements, and for communication with potential customers or real customers of the product, how to build on those products. Then what we ask is, I would recommend our company's product to my good friends with full confidence. And we ask the people to rate how much they agree with that statement. And again, we see once we've got the replies which are 8, 9, 10, which is very good. Of course, it's very subjective because it's my feeling how many points I put there. But if we've got 8, 9, 10, it's very fine. We see that people trust in the product because they would give it also to their friends. But when there is much bigger variety, we of course need to work on that and look for the reasons why our people, why our employees state that many points as they decided. Then we've got, for example, the question, or the statement, I do trust the management and owners that they do know what they are doing and lead the company in the right direction. And that you see that even in the companies where they trust in the product, that they would recommend the product to their best friends, here the situation changes, that the trust into management is something which is related with what I spoke before, which is the purpose and goal. Purpose and goal, which set the directions, but also the limits. And it doesn't matter how much you are good at shooting, if you don't know where is the target, you won't reach the correct target. And we need to set the companies, we need to set the organizations, departments, faculties, and so on for reaching the joint goals that we trust. So that's why it's very important to work on those essence of technology transfer, which is much deeper in the organization. Then we have the question or the statement, I do trust my supervisor or boss. So there we can see all kinds of varieties usually, because, well, this is people think, I like you or I don't like you. I'm satisfied with what you say or how you decide or not. So again, we need to find out whether we have at the right position, right people, or we need to do the changes and look for other ones. What happens mainly in the companies, it's probably a little bit different at university, but not really much, is that the leaders or the bosses, the supervisors are people who are expert in certain area, but they are not really managers. Nobody taught them to be manager. There are some people who have it inside themselves. They can manage to be good managers from their personality level, but many of them, mainly technicians, need to learn how to manage the departments, how to be a good manager. So in this case, we see on the graphs in the organization that, okay, here comes the information that we should really help those people to become better managers. Because it doesn't matter how good they are at technical thing, we need to improve their skills concerning communication and concerning management of people. Then we've got a question like, or the statement, I can count on my colleagues to deliver what we have to deliver on time. And we see in what situation is the team, whether they can trust each other or whether there are any bigger constraints, and we need to work on those. The other issue is the openness and the access to all the information, to tools, to whatever is needed for the work, whether the people have that access or not. And we see here all kind of a variety. Again, we saw the companies which have good products and people trust those products, but when it comes to openness to information, it differs. So it's very important to look for bottlenecks in the organizations where the information is stuck, which people don't have access to the information, to the tools, to whatever, so that the innovation could get rapid flow within the organization and the processes were set much better. The same concerns when comes to the problems, because when something appears in the organization, people know that they can realize there is a problem, but they need to tell it. Of course, we don't usually, as human beings, try to say, well, you are behind that problem, it's because of you we didn't manage, or because of you I couldn't do this or that. This is not a problem. That's like a Toyota case. I'm sure already met with that in your past, that there is the bell where when there is a problem, they ring the bell and they stop all the production, because it's important, firstly, to fix the problem rather than produce dozens or hundreds of cars with some defect, with some problem inside. So this is very, very crucial to teach people in the organization that a problem is not their problem, that the problem is a challenge to be solved in the organization. And only then, when we solve the problems or challenges, we can be better, and we can be better in innovation and getting the products on the market. Another thing which we are trying to find out in the companies is how much the opinion of people matters. Because once there is nobody interested in my opinion, once I've got the solutions, once I can propose the things, but there is nobody who would be interested. There is no process set, or the meetings that are organized are one-way meetings from the management to employees, but nobody asks any questions towards employees. And they are more status meetings rather than real meetings for solving challenges of the organization. It's very difficult to expect from people that they would be innovative, that they would really come with good ideas, with new products, with whatever we are heading for. So once we've got the people who don't think their opinion matters, we shall really start to work hard on that and change the culture, change the processes inside, and create as many possibilities for gatherings where new ideas are generated and people can really be valued for their ideas. That's really crucial thing to reach. And one more graph I would like to show you is when we are trying to find out how are the meetings organized, how they are effective, what is agreed on is then delivered or fulfilled on time. And again, you can see that there is all kinds of variety of replies from point 1 to point 9. It's very difficult to reach point 10. So it's another crucial thing, how well are the meetings organized, how people are involved in the meetings. What I usually say to the owners or to the managers of departments, use your post-its, because if you ask something and you don't wait for the replies, you won't really find out what's going on in the organization. The popular brainstormings are very good thing in good cultures, well-set cultures where people trust each other. But when you've got shy people who don't really want to share or who are not courageous enough to speak out, even brainstorming sessions are of little value. So then if people start using post-its, put a question, and all other people have to put something on post-it and then put it somewhere on the wall board, whatever in the organization, and makes much more sense for the organizations and getting much more input for improving the processes in the organization and for generating ideas for future products, for services, for improvements in them, and so on. So this is something I would like to share with you so that you can think it in the future, that there are other aspects of innovations and transfer of technologies which might be the cause why it's working well or not working well, and that there needs to be somehow looked for the roots of why it's not working or getting inspired when it's working in different departments, because it might be even the difference between the departments where one is doing really well and the other one is not. What's important in those questionnaires is that the owner or management of the company, of the institution, organization has to be involved and has to agree, because sometimes I've got the request from employees for such a service, for such questionnaire, but we need to reach the agreement with the owners for that, because then it's in a way worthless unless the management is involved in that, agrees with that, wants to work with that questionnaire and the results of that. Then we can do miracles in the companies. But if they are not interested, then it's really not worth investing the time, because anyways, there will be no further steps done. The questionnaires need to be anonymous so that people could really trust the process and could really say what they want. Of course, one thing is setting the points from 1 to 10, but we've got the questionnaire where people can then add the comments why they set it's number 9 or 6 or 5 if they want to. They don't have to, but they can do that. And then we bring to managers and to company owners much more detailed information, what is behind the numbers, what is behind the graphs, which I have showed you. So for me, for me, very important message for this presentation is fix what does not work well before you can expect the results you would like to have in the organization. Because when the roots of human behavior and links and teams is not set well, if the people don't trust each other, it will never work well. So the miracles will never happen. But with people who trust each other, the miracles in the organizations can happen. Of course, how to fix that? There are many potential opportunities and tools and whatever, very fast things to fix the things are the company internal workshops, where everybody works together. But as I said, by using the post-its, in fact, everybody works on their own, because they can say whatever, they can write whatever they think, they can propose, they can bring the ideas on the table. So this is one of the things, everybody in the organization can do that within its departments or at the level of the organization as such. One more thing I would like to share with you. I work all the time when I work with the companies, when I do such a questionnaire, and when I get the feedback from all the employees or majority of the employees, after a certain period, half year or latest 1 year, I ask the owners to provide me the feedback, what actions they did. And here comes, for example, one of my clients, which I got the feedback just like a month ago. And there are really the changes that after 10 months from the questionnaire and from presenting the results, it's not only presenting the results, but also providing the tips for improvement. Actually, the companies get like 30 to 40 pages of results and tips for the improvements. So after all that, they decide which things they will implement, and then they also look for their own solutions for the problems that they see at those questionnaires and those graphs at the replies of their employees. So here is one of the feedbacks from the clients, and I must say that within 10 months they did quite a good job. They did a lot of changes. They set new meetings. They set one-to-one meeting with heads of the departments. They improved the sitting, improve the comfort of the team. So there are many different actions that the company really did. And now it's the time that, like next week, we agreed that after 1 year we'll do the questionnaire again to find out whether the changes that were set in the companies helped to improve the previous state of play from a year behind. One more example I would like to show you. This is again one of my clients with whom I work since 2019, and I can see that the changes they are developing throughout the years really bring the results in money. So they really went with the profits up. In 2023, they went a little bit down just because they invested a lot in the company. But you can see that turnover is rising year by year, and now they more than doubled since 2019 their turnover. So this is also, I'm not saying that the questionnaire solves all the problems in the organization, but can really find out where are the bottlenecks of the organization, and if the people take it from the right way and they are supported by the owners, by managers, and set right processes within the organization, it might really work well in the organization, because the people get more opportunities for the development and for their ideas to turn into really productive things, and the company can see it in financial level as well. So for me, the innovation really starts inside, and once there are barriers, let's fix them in the organizations, and then we can really expect breakthroughs, and as a result also the technology transfers from universities towards companies, or from companies to companies. So this is my message. If you have any questions, you can ask either now or reach me afterwards. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Maria. An excellent presentation with practical, valuable insights into how this environment really works within companies. And yes, you had the one section I also realized during Thor's presentation how important is to be aware of the institution direction and goals, milestones, and to be aligned with its strategy. So truly consider this reminder very, very beneficial. So once again, are there any questions?
We have
Yeah, Thor, do you have?
I don't, but there is a question on the chat. You might want to read it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you very much for reminding me. Okay. Thank you. I would like to ask how, in your experience, you are dealing with hard set power roles in organizations. Often the roles, managers, director, etc., in organizations become abstractive in purposeful problem solving. Basically, people in positions pull rank and abstract otherwise sensible information. Any suggestions in cracking those detrimental hierarchies when needed?
Yeah, it's definitely it's a tough thing. Depends on for me. It always depends on how is the that owner or the top manager directed in the organization. It's usually I would say in private companies it's quite easy because usually the owner wants the results, wants to profit, wants to lead. In public institution, it's sometimes very difficult because there are different interests. So it might not really work that well. But I would say thanks to those questionnaires, we can find out where is the organization. And once we see those graphs, the people are getting aware and they look for the solutions. And usually when you allow people to add the comments, then they will, of course, say. So I had the cases where we saw that there are toxic people, and then it's clear that they need to get rid of those people. They either talk to them and find the way they change those people, or they tell them, okay, either you change or I'm sorry, we will have to say goodbye. And there are some people who change, and there are some people who don't change. You saw there on one of my slides that one of the things that the company which I'm working now with was that they just said goodbye to two of the people because they found them toxic. So in those questionnaires, the people can say what they think, and as it is anonymous, they usually say, this concrete person makes trouble. And if it's like 10, 15% or 30% of people say that, when they turn to us, we are not even involved in the company. I usually go into the company where I know nobody at all. So then I present it to the owners and I say, look, there are so many people saying that you've got a trouble within the organization. So then it's either concrete person we are speaking with, and we approach that person, and we are trying to find out why that person is problematic, whether it's like self-esteem, whether it's the personality. Just probably a fun fact. Once I had such a questionnaire, and there were two owners. And one of the owners, after the results, came to me and said, do you think I should withdraw from the company? Because we found out that one of the biggest bottlenecks of the company, one of the barriers to really innovation and trust of the employees was his personality, because he was really like, if you did not agree with the person, he would not speak with you for months. So
it was great he realized it.
Yeah. So then he came that, do you think I should withdraw from the company? Our result was, of course, there were two owners, luckily. So the one which was very fine with people, so he stayed at the level of really that executive director who meets with the people, and the other one was moved towards marketing, towards external environment when needed to communicate. So it's always like, if there is the will of the management, of the owners, to have really good company, organization, department, whichever. We have the saying in Slovakia, how is it, that the fish smells from the head? We say it. So if there is real interest, then there is the solution. And even if you have to say goodbye to some people, you will say goodbye. I've got another client now at the moment where we also found out that there is a problematic person. But I did not really say, go and throw her away. But I said, go and speak with the person and try to help that person. Probably it's the problem in the family, because before she was good, but now she behaves completely differently. So firstly, go and speak with the person. Where is the problem? What the person expects from the organization, how they want to grow. Sometimes it's only the matter that, well, I've been doing it for 10 years and I'm bored. I want something different. So it's really look for the reasoning behind the people, even if it's certain level. I know that sometimes at universities it's a very problematic thing, because it depends whether you are professor, assistant professor. The people need certain people at certain positions. But try to do as much as possible, probably involve the people from outside. Like I go as the person who doesn't know the company. So sometimes when the people from outside speak, they are better listened than those from inside the organization.
Thank you very much. I was the guy who asked this question. Thank you, because it is something that I find very rarely addressed in European Union. We have brilliant theories on management, and then in practice, when we ground it to the human level, we have such problems. And I find that experience from Far East, where we can use society, organization as a leverage point to change individual, easy. While here in the Western societies where individualism is appreciated, many times, even facing with the raw data about these people, it becomes personal. And once it's personal, it might influence other people to act, let's say, not in the most rational way every time. So that is something that we are encountering. And also in a very small enterprises, often we have to deal with mythologies and myths, depending from where the owner or the manager is coming, who was his or her hero. I won't name, but and the famous people from entrepreneurial world from America and so on, and they try to emulate this and kind of imitate this approach. I find that also very challenging in trying to help those organizations. Do you share this feeling?
For sure. As I say, I work with the companies for over 25 years, and I've seen plenty of tools, and even some presentations start when people are presenting those robust tools. When they say, "Oh, well, yeah, we speak with two people in the company. We did a review. We sent like 30, 40, or 50 pages of report on the state of the company. But well, the truth is that the owners don't really read that and don't know what to do with the report. I must say that my experience is our companies get the report of somewhere between 30 to 40 pages, but they read it word by word and even several times because it's about their company. The information is from their employees, and there are tips for the improvement of concrete things which are found out during that. Because what we do, I did not really mention that during the presentation, but what we do also is that we get the feedback through the questionnaires. And based on those questionnaires and what the people write, when I've got the doubts, I organize one-to-one meetings with from 4 to 8 employees, depending on how many issues I found from different levels. So then I really get much deeper into what's going on in the companies. And I must say, I would proudly say that many times I get to know the companies better than the owners at that moment. So then when I speak, I've got a meeting with the owners and we go through all the results that are there. They tell me that, well, we had no idea that is something that is going on in the company. So I was planning that I will do this and that steps, but I'll have to start in this, that, and solve these things first before I want to go where I wanted to go that year. So it's really tough job, but it's important. We don't really have like it's not the interest of thousands of clients per year. It's interest of dozens of clients, but those who are really interested, who want to make the changes, who really see that they've got a problem in the company and they are interested. So we can't save the world. We can't establish the peace in the world, but we can do step-by-step changes in those companies where it's worth.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. So thank you very much. Real impact to be seen. And are there any other questions on this topic, or maybe any topic that was mentioned today? Okay, if not, also thank you all for joining us today. It was the first of the advanced courses for innovation professionals, where we took a deeper look into the topic of technology transfer. Special thanks goes to today's speakers who provided us with a wealth of useful insights. We look forward to the upcoming editions of the training series, and so just wishing you all a pleasant rest of the day, and wish you all the best. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, Tomas. Bye, everyone.